Competition in the RPG space sure is heating up. So, in today's industry report, we're going to talk about the Avowed situation because there have been some leaks that a number of people are seeming to suggest are actually worth us talking about, and also the broader sort of meta context of the whole situation, where Obsidian are basically taking on Bethesda at their own game, which is something that's rather funny because if you go into the past, of course, Obsidian did Fallout New Vegas, basically the best of the modern Fallout games, and, Bethesda kind of did them out of their bonus because they got one Metacritic point less than their contract actually wanted, which was a little bit unfortunate. They then, of course, went on to, in a way, take on at least the essence of what many people liked about Fallout, of course, with Outer Worlds, making this an interesting and spicy situation now that they have access to so much capital because they, of course, have been purchased and are now owned and are under the umbrella of Microsoft Game Studios. Meaning that this sure is an interesting situation. They now truly can take on the biggest titans of the industry with all the money that they've got. So, strap in, of course, if you do one thing. Look, right, over 50% of the people who watch this channel do not subscribe. And those subs and those likes truly do help. We'd love to grow things towards 250k, and we're putting a lot of stock into getting you guys daily, or at least near daily, well, probably daily, content on the channel. So, your subs and your likes would be super appreciated. Thank you for that, and with that said, let's get into the video. Currently, we just don't know a great deal about Avowed, officially speaking. I mean, crucially, it's set in the same world as the Pillars of Eternity games, and that is something that will be quite big because all of this rich lore and backstory to draw upon, and that's the sort of thing where even if you don't know it when you go into the game, it will give you that feeling that, well, your gameplay is taking place sort of against this really rich backdrop. It's something where in Skyrim, you might not know all the lore of the Elder Scrolls, but you at least feel like you are in this aged real world. So, we don't know that much officially, but there have been some leaks. So, we've got some new rumors that are courtesy of a Reset Era member called Sponger. Now, Sponger does not have the longest track record. They do have a track record, but it's not particularly long, but they have actually been vouched for by more reputable leakers in the, leaking side of games discourse, and some of their points are oddly detailed. So that's what we're going to be covering today, at least initially, but do of course remember that this is just rumor. But that said, it's pretty juicy and pretty fun. I think you're going to find it interesting. So getting into the leaks, Avowed is set to feature a fully open world that will be much larger than Skyrim, but what I think is key is that it is set to be more dense and more contrasted than Skyrim and being filled to the brim with things to do. And I'm to assume there the more contrasted would just mean within the world, more contrast between the different sort of regions, where Skyrim was, at times, yes, a little bit samey. And of course, Skyrim was a game renowned for being, in many ways, as big as a lake, but as dense or as deep as a stream. So it seems like that's something that they maybe want to not repeat with this game. But apparently there is going to be two very large cities, lots of landmarks, statues, things like that, accompanied by then smaller locations that contrast lush, wild areas and ruined landscapes. I think some of that lush wildness you maybe saw in the teaser trailer. Now, Obsidian are supposedly focused on creating a reactive world that is backed up by real-time weather features. I've got to imagine that's probably a little bit more than the radiant AI questing system of Skyrim, but supposedly anyway, they're putting special attention into a mysterious physics-driven or physics-based magic system that's a very ambitious feature that they have been spending a lot of time on. Now, I've got to say, if true, that could be really, really big. Skyrim's magic systems, of course, unmodded, are, they're thematic. They're something we've been sort of experiencing through Elder Scrolls for a long time, but they're not really groundbreaking. Something that is physics-based, though, that could unlock a lot more of the game feeling like a toy. right, with all the crazy things you could do. I mean, even think about, say, Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, where having that dynamic world with the weather and the physics all working with each other just created so many, like, spontaneous moments of joy, and basically cool gamer moments that you're going to remember. So if they're doing that, pretty exciting. Also, companions are set to return, but in a different way to the Outer Worlds. There was no more details given, and apparently there will be very, very large boss fights. Again, no real more details given. Now, in terms of setting, the rumors actually do say that it's going to have a fresh narrative that will be reportedly independent of the previous stories in the Pillars of Eternity world, and will be dealing with an encroaching tyrannical threat. Which, to be honest, in principle, I've seen many encroaching tyrannical threats in my video games before, but you know what? It's Obsidian, right? What's the thing they're good at? Writing. So even if an encroaching tyrannical threat like Alduin would be kind of boring, right, if it's done by a lot of devs, I actually think that Obsidian are the people who are the storytellers who could actually pull that off. Now, in terms of production, we are told that a 100-person strong team have been working in this game for around 2 years, and that the game is already in full production, with the team expected to grow further, and that its release target is 2022 or early 2023. Now, that does seem like it would be around a similar time, maybe a little bit after Starfield, and certainly before The Elder Scrolls 6. Okay, so that is the situation. That's what we know so far. Should Bethesda be worried? Well, we'll start off by talking about the reasons why they should be worried. This really does seem to be positioned by fans and media alike as a competitor to Skyrim. Now, that's a pretty grand comparison, yes, but Avowed could be up to it because, well, money, right? They're funded by Microsoft now. They can pull off larger scales. So, I mean, there's reasons why they should and should not be worried. For the reasons why, well, people actually like Obsidian these days, and they trust them a lot more. Bethesda have not really been great for their own brand, and if you look at, say, where there's a very direct intersection between those audiences, Fallout New Vegas is absolutely loved, and a lot of that is for the writing, where, frankly, New Vegas thoroughly outclasses Fallout 3. Then, of course, you got The Outer Worlds. That's a game that was, I think, quite loved, played by quite a large number of people, and was in some ways dubbed as a bit of a Fallout killer. Not really killer, but, you know, the people who love Fallout would probably really like The Outer Worlds. Another thing that's worth mentioning there is a lot of people have played that game, and a lot of people will play it in the future. And one of the reasons why is Microsoft Game Pass, or Xbox Game Pass, right? The barrier to entry for that game is absolutely minuscule, and that does mean that as time goes on, I think that game will have a very strong long tail on it, and that's going to get more people excited for what Obsidian as a studio are actually doing. And that does mean that, yes, hopes are going to be pretty damn high for Avowed, especially I'd say as well because this is probably their largest project. It's almost certainly their largest project. It's what they're doing with that big Xbox money. And, you know, Obsidian are a studio who have always had sort of little money issues here and there, polish issues in their games, and now they finally seem to have just that clear run and good cash flow that they'll need to pull off something of a truly epic scale. I think another reason why Bethesda should be worried is that unlike The Outer Worlds, this isn't just some new IP coming out of nowhere, because Pillars is already an established world. It's got its own lore, its own history, its own continents, its own magic system, and that does mean that, you know, it's going to be like that feeling of you go into this RPG and you're in a well-lived-in, well-realized world, where, of course, if you want maybe a deeper connection to that world, you could then go and play Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. And this is the sort of thing that could actually give Avowed, I think, greater standing in the face of Bethesda's Elder Scrolls IP, which obviously is really strong. So basically, Avowed wouldn't just be some new plucky upstart. Now, then another thing is release timing, because depending on that release timing, Avowed could fill in a very substantial gap in the market, especially with Elder Scrolls 6 being years and years away, and the weird situation of how it was announced. Let's be real, okay? Let's not beat around the bush here. Like, they wanted Elder Scrolls Blades, okay? They wanted that mobile game. Why did they announce Elder Scrolls 6 at the same time? Well, it's already something that's been talked about even by them. They knew, like with Fallout Shelter, that they were taking one of those IPs in a more different direction. Therefore, in order to actually meet people's expectations, they did their reveal that Elder Scrolls 6 is a thing, which got people excited and made Elder Scrolls Blades more of an acceptable thing. So they did that so early that they kicked off the hype cycle, and they've got fans going absolutely frothing mad, wanting more information about that game. So in this universe, right, where there's this big information void for Elder Scrolls 6, the big new first-person RPG, here could march in Obsidian with their own big open-world first-person RPG that could be coming out quite a bit earlier. And I think that's something that Bethesda maybe should be a bit more worried about, because people have been patient for updates with the Elder Scrolls 6, but really, patience is always going to be limited. I always remember Blizzard talking about how much they regretted announcing Diablo 3 so very early. And certainly Bethesda maybe have invoked a little bit of that themselves. I mean, come on, we'd barely even know anything about Starfield. And it's their next game, not even Elder Scrolls 6. So yes, in a world where people who love that genre are basically just, kept happy by Skyrim being re-released again and again, I mean, come on. I think it's fertile soil, right, for some disruption in that market, especially because it's Obsidian. People love him. They write great stories. I think there's a lot of hype behind that. Now, that said, on the other hand, is there a reason why Bethesda should not be worried? Well, we got to think about that too, because Skyrim is absolutely bloody loved, right? And because it's so bloody loved, people obviously will want the next one, right? That's just going to be a thing. I think that the next Elder Scrolls game will basically be a humongous success almost no matter what. So that's going to be major. And I mean, it's Elder Scrolls. It's one of the premier RPG franchises. It's been around for so long. You're not going to unseat that just because you've got a good story that appeals to the most core of gaming audiences. And what I mean there is that Elder Scrolls is known by just about everybody who has seen a console. That is a little bit different from those of us who are thinking, wow, like most people, remember, they don't know the difference between a publisher and a developer. Like, they probably don't even know that Fallout New Vegas wasn't made by Bethesda. So for those people, they're just going to see, oh, cool, it's the next one, I'm going to buy that. And that's always going to be something that's just going to do really well in terms of general audience sales and the sort of thing that's not going to be captured in the discourse that we are currently having about this issue. Again, if you look at, say, the Outer Worlds, Worlds, I was almost say Outer Wilds, it did really, really, really well, but it didn't blow everything away because, again, it was a new IP, so it was really the core audiences that embraced that, and less so the general audiences, the people who will have went out and, always buy their Sony first parties and, things like that. So I think that's pretty major. Plus, Skyrim's sticky as hell. People have been playing Skyrim for years and years and years, so they just have this absolutely deep sort of demographic, appeal in so many places. There's another thing too. Will MXR Reviews be able to make not safe for work modding content on Avowed? I mean, come on, his Patreon demands it, but being real here, Skyrim mods. You look at MXR's channel, yeah, people want their nudie Skyrim mods, and they watch that millions and millions and millions of times per month. There's Enderal, by the big Skyrim total conversion by the German team. There's so many mods for Skyrim. That's given that game extreme longevity, and Bethesda absolutely will know with the next Elder Scrolls game that they'll need mod support. Now, here's the thing. If mod support comes out for the Elder Scrolls 6, then that will be a platform for player-generated content for another decade, maybe 2 decades. If Avowed doesn't have that, then even, no matter how massive its launch and maybe some of the follow-up support is, then it's always going to be missing out on that one thing that has always helped Bethesda, where their game comes out, it's got its charms, it's got its flaws, the community fixes the flaws and builds content for them for free. That is just so severely powerful, and if Avowed doesn't have that, it's going to struggle. So, I would then say, Obsidian, mod support. If you guys do mod support, then you're really going to be a serious challenger. But until then, there's always going to be that special thing of Elder Scrolls modding that you just will not be able to compete against. The then is also just markets and timing. Look, being real, people are free to enjoy both games, right? It's not like all the people are going to put their money into one game and not the other, especially because it seems like Avowed will be coming out a decent bit before the next Elder Scrolls title. I mean, take Outer Worlds. That's not killed Fallout, right? It's just that the people who like Fallout also happen to really like that. And it's kind of funny. I mean, in a way, it took on some Fallout, it took on some Starfield and being science fiction, but it's not like Outer Worlds is going to hurt Starfield's sales, right? Unless Starfield really ends up being a dud, which, as a fan of science fiction, would make me actually very sad. I know that as much as we beat up on Bethesda all the time because they do so many just genuinely silly, boneheaded, annoying, etc. things, I mean, there is nothing I'd like more than a great Elder Scrolls 6 and a great Starfield, being real. I want to throw my money at that company for a great product in return, and much of the recent problem has been that you've not really been able to do that. So it's an interesting situation, but fundamentally I think these games will actually help each other. To be honest, I almost wonder if this, pitching them against each other is a sort of a false thing, because if their timing is such that they're not competing for the same consumer spend, then it's just going to be broad genre success. and, Avowed can get people back into first. Basically, the Elder Scrolls 6 hype cycle, and then it not being out, that will get people super excited for Avowed. Avowed will then mean they're playing first-person open-world RPGs, which will probably just make them more excited for the Elder Scrolls 6. That is, of course, assuming that they are both well-regarded games. I think the only time where this could really be a bloodbath is if you're going for a Overwatch versus Battleborn situation where, hey, at least you got a fun Crobcat video out of it. But there you go. That is basically what's up here. Is Obsidian going to usurp Bethesda's throne? I think for general audiences, no. I think both companies are going to be quite successful with their next outings, but I think that Obsidian will solidify a bit more of their core audience. I think that in the same way you have these Bethesda fans who love Fallout, and maybe less now, but they love Fallout, they love Elder Scrolls, they're sticking with that company, they've stuck with that company's things since Daggerfall or since Morrowind. I think now that Obsidian is becoming larger, and it's being able to do higher scoped games and a lot more of its own original IP, I think what's going to happen is Obsidian are going to get their own core fans more and more and more than they already have. Of course, the Pillars doing very well, but I guess being a bit more niche because of the type of game that Pillars is. Now, if they can do that, then it really could solidify Obsidian as one of the big RPG... they are one of the big RPG studios, but sort of blasting them into that sort of situation where it's not like they're doing the follow-up game to Fallout 3. No, they are doing the big game themselves. And you know what? That's great, because more competition in the RPG market would be fantastic. And as somebody who loves sort of the big, expansive, Oblivion and Skyrim-like games, you know what? I kind of would like more than one every decade, to be honest. So if Obsidian are doing that, I'm going to be pretty damn happy. So yes, in closing, this Obsidian versus Bethesda discourse will go on, but honestly, I think the thing that's really going to actually matter is timing. That's what will decide whether it is a versus situation or a rising tide lifting up all ships. That is it for today's video. Let me know. What do you think? Who do you think's going to win? What do you think's better? What are you more excited about? Do let me know in those comments. Of course, as I said, be sure to hit that sub button and that like button. It truly does help us out now that we're trying to, get a bit of a shot in the arm of this channel after, I kind of had my own personal dramas for about 2.5 weeks and really didn't get that much content out. So sorry about that, but hey, we're back in the saddle again. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.